the summer of 1974, there were approximately 3.5 billion people. Somewhere between then and the year 2000, we will most likely double our population. There will probably be about 7 billion people. So the world got together for the first time ever to view with alarm, or to charge that those who speak of a population explosion are viewing with false alarm, to admit that they have a serious problem, or to state that the most serious problem they have is a lack of people. But they did meet, and they did talk about it.
I declare open the United Nations World Population Conference. We meet for the first international conference of governments to discuss population policy. The draft World Population Plan of Action is to be presented here for your assessment. It addresses itself to problems associated with rapid population growth and therefore speaks to nations concerned about this matter.
India is one nation very much concerned about this matter. She has 600 million today and is growing at the rate of more than 1 million a month. However serious her problems of underemployment and hunger are now, they will probably get a lot worse, more than 600 million times worse in the next 25 years. For the Indian government predicts her population will more than double. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, most of the rest of Southeast Asia find themselves in much the same predicament. They, together with China and Japan, account for some 2/3 of the present world population. What has happened in Japan, what is happening in China, and what will probably happen in India and the rest of Southeast Asia is vital to the whole world, for they are now 2/3 of it and counting.
Clean them out. Clean them out. Scissors. It's okay. Come here. Hold it.
Dr. Karen Singh, India's Minister of Health and Family Planning.
In India, which has 14% of the world's population, every 7th person in the world is an Indian, we have been trying to reduce fertility for over 2 decades. Ours is the oldest and possibly the largest family planning program in the world, sponsored by a government. The real problem in our country is poverty. And we feel that poverty is the main cause for overpopulation because it has been found all over the world that when living standards rise, population growth begins to fall automatically. 80% of India still lives in the villages. So that's a large number of people in the villages. And our new approach is to integrate family planning and health into the minimum needs program and deliver an entire package to the rural communities. We feel that family planning can no longer be looked upon as simply an independent, separate program. It has got to become part of our assault on poverty.
I'm not going to have it done. Why aren't you going to have it done? Because I have a lot of hard work to do. In India, sterilization for both men and women is a practical form of birth control. But there is great difficulty overcoming superstitions and getting correct information to the people. This family lives under a tree. They are villagers who came to the city in search of work. They don't believe in family planning either. The family consists of a mother, 4 daughters, and a son. She had 4 other sons, but they all died. Now her surviving son is the sole support of the family. He also has a family of his own, 8 children, and he does not believe in family planning because if he should die, his sons will take care of his wife. And besides, he explains, the children don't eat very much food. And by the time they are 10 years old, they can earn their keep. When asked about school for his children, he says it is out of the question. He doesn't have enough money for school. And he also believes that once the children go to school, they won't want to do hard work anymore.
Unless we can drastically reduce the morbidity and mortality rate of children in the rural areas, it will not be possible for us to persuade our villagers to take to family planning. It's not enough for us to say family plan because in the year 2000 it will be helpful. That's not good enough. We've got to be able to prove to the man that it is in his immediate interest to have less children. And that can only be done if we can assure him or give him reasonable assurance that the children that he does have will survive. Otherwise, he'll simply say that I need the children, and even if I want only 3 children, I must have 6 in order to ensure that 3 survive. So a basic aspect is the increase in the general health services, the general standards of nutrition, of immunization and so on, so that family planning becomes part of our efforts to build a better life for the people of India.
The family planning programs are generally successful in the urban areas, particularly in the large cities like Bombay, where almost 90% of the women have some sort of professional maternity and health care. But it is a different situation for the nearly 500 million people living in villages. Before the government can introduce health care, it must first fulfill basic needs like roads and safe drinking water.
On the fixed population of a maximum 3,000.
And the minimum needs program is designed to attack the problems of poverty in the villages. In order to achieve this, we are gearing our entire resources. We are putting together the various workers that we had for malaria and smallpox and family planning and so on, and as it were merging them into a single multi-purpose worker, male and female.
FPHA का भी वही location, वही 2,000 population, so that they can simultaneously look after the male population instead of the female population. Idea ये है कि अगर एक केस एक महीने
In 1974, India's population of 600 million increased by about 13 million, what has become their normal rate of growth. This is mainly because improved health standards have cut the death rate dramatically. People live longer, and they are having as many children as ever. Children are still considered a form of social security.
इसमें किसी प्रकार के कीटाणु जा सकते हैं और उससे बच्चे को टट्टी, उल्टी और हर तरह की बीमारी हो सकती है.
Only improved living conditions can change this traditional attitude. And for that, economic development is essential. But there are many blocks to economic development. There are natural calamities like droughts or floods. There are economic calamities like oil shortage and worldwide inflation. And always there is the harsh problem of unequally shared resources.
Family planning is a lot of shit, you know, because if people don't have any food to eat, how do you expect them to put on a condom before they have sex at night? I don't think your family planning has a chance of succeeding, especially in the underdeveloped countries. How do you expect us to control our population when the West is not controlling its consumption? Do you know that America consumes 35% of the world's resources? Look at all these boys. Sometime when they grow up, they're going to help their parents to earn a living. And nobody could be bothered about what is going to happen 20 years hence. It's the moment, this moment. You know, really when you start talking of family planning, the whole problem is who's really bothered, who's got the time? We're all so tired. I mean, even those who don't really have to worry too much about a living, but really we are very tired just fighting this climate, fighting so many problems, the bureaucracy, the state of the country, the railway strike, the government's apathy to everything, our apathy to everything, and we are combating that. And at that moment, to think of family planning, frankly, even as an educated man, family planning just doesn't cross my mind.
As a result of the depression of economic standards for many centuries, the population has grown. And we feel that the tremendous growth in population has been the result of poverty. And of course, in turn, it begins to affect poverty more. So it's a sort of a vicious circle. But the circle has got to be broken at the poverty level. What we are fighting is poverty, not the people.
India's lesson: fight poverty first. Then the people can afford to think about birth control. China learned this more than 20 years ago. She fought poverty first.
In the 20-odd years since the founding of the People's Republic of China, China's population has increased nearly 60%, from about 500 million to nearly 800 million. Yet in the same period, annual grain output has more than doubled, rising from 110 million to over 250 million tons. And the output of textiles and other industrial products has increased manyfold. At present, the area under cultivation in China is only slightly more than 10% of our total territory. There are enormous potentialities untapped, since there remain vast areas to be reclaimed, and the per hectare yield can still be greatly raised. At present, the living standards of our people are still rather low. Yet everybody is assured of employment, food, and clothing. And the livelihood of the people is steadily improving. On the basis of energetically developing production and raising the living standards of the people, China has developed medical and health services throughout the cities and countryside, strengthened the work of maternity and child care, and while reducing mortality on the one hand, practiced birth planning on the other to regulate the birth rate. Our birth planning is not merely birth control, as some people understand it to be, but it comprises different measures under different circumstances. In densely populated areas, late marriage and birth control are encouraged on the basis of voluntariness. While active treatment is given in cases of sterility. In national minority areas and other sparsely populated areas, appropriate measures are taken to facilitate population growth, while birth control advice and help are given to those parents who have too many children or desire birth control. Of course, these are but initial achievements. We have not yet acquired adequate experience in the work of birth planning, and we must continue our efforts.
China's lesson: no more poverty and as few or as many people as she plans. Japan's population success story is told in very different and almost totally economic terms.
In the course of Japan's economic development since World War II, some of our nation's biggest problems, an inadequate food supply, lack of full employment, and a disproportionate number of women, have shown such a remarkable improvement that foreign observers might have the impression that in Japan the population problem doesn't exist anymore. However, as time passes and new developments occur, we have new problems to face. First of all, due to Japan's rapid economic development, the younger generation is moving to the cities to find jobs. And that has brought on a manpower shortage in farming. And the young generation finds labor and environmental problems in the big cities too. Secondly, during World War II, the death rate increased considerably. And after that, the birth rate dropped drastically.
It was not right after World War II that the birth rate dropped. First, there was a baby boom, fathered by veterans of the Pacific fighting, such as these. Then, in 1949, there was legalized abortion. The combination of that and the Japanese economic miracle of the 50s and the 60s was what caused the birth rate to drop so drastically. Because what the country had failed to win by force of arms, sources for raw materials and markets for manufactured goods, she legitimately acquired as byproducts of her booming post-war economy. Though her heavy industries had been shattered by strategic bombing, her workforce was largely intact. And her workforce was not only literate and well-trained, it had the energies fostered by life in a moderate climate. The necessary wills to survive a cold winter, a hot summer, and the seasonal changes in between. Japan also had two other major things going for her. No modern history of colonial domination by anybody, and a work ethic that could and did put it all together. By October 1973, her people enjoyed the highest standard of living in Asia, as well as one of the highest standards of living in the world. There was virtually no unemployment, and the people were so rapidly approaching zero population growth that many businessmen were not only voicing concern about where the future workforce for an expanding economy would come from, they were actively lobbying against abortion. Demographers say that when a nation is well-fed, clothed, housed, and reaches full or near full employment, the birth rate automatically falls. Japan was no exception to their rule. Though she may no longer have a population problem as such, her people face virtually every other major problem known to the rest of the industrially developed world, plus a few uniquely their own. Along with the fringe benefits of free lunch at the company cafeteria and free medical care at the company clinic, comes setting up exercises to begin the day. And a responsive reading session designed to shore up devotion to duty, as a manager reminds his section to let us always think of industrial development, and the employees repeat, let us always think of industrial development. Fairness, to be fair always. Fairness, to be fair always. Improvement, always improvement. Improvement, always improvement. There are also extracurricular activities to reinforce the employee's identity with the company. Outings to a shrine. And an annual company picnic complete with a tug of war. The notion being that in the company that plays together, nobody ever goes on strike. To any of the world's half-billion who are at or near the starvation level, it would be irrelevant, if not insulting, to say that man does not live by bread alone. But the boredom of an assembly line is just as real, whether it's in Detroit, Moscow, or Tokyo.
Well, what he thought originally and what he's doing now, there is a great gap between the two, because what he's doing now is quite monotonous assembly work.
Especially middle-aged and old people appreciate their loving care, by the big bosses or company. But many young people's, their desire are varied. Their interests are varied. So they don't want to take a summer trip or vacation trip with the company people, with the whole family together. No, they don't like this kind of system.
Others complain about pollution.
It is already killing the Japanese people. I mean, the huge industrial build-up and concentration of industries. Many people are killed. You have heard about Minamata disease, the case mercury pollution, in which many have been killed. And in Kawasaki, people are dying of asthma.
Or the role of women. This is one of only 10 girls enrolled in Tokyo University's freshman law class of 600, for example. Marriage itself is something else that many Japanese women are beginning to resent.
If I marry one of those programmed little businessmen, the big thing of my life will be my marriage ceremony and my honeymoon, and when I come back, I will probably be pregnant. And I will have my first baby, and my husband will keep going out. He won't change his bachelor's way of life. He will stay out late every night, and I will have to stay at home and raise the children. And once a week, we will all go out to a zoo or something. And it's just a completely uninspired life.
Or being uprooted by industrial growth.
The biggest reason is that they want to stick to the land where the ancestor has given them, and they have been living here for several hundred years, and they don't want to be drifting around with their ancestors' grave in their hands. They don't want to be the refugee.
And when they do have a labor dispute, it is both colorful and loud. But the work ethic is strong enough in some to overcome any demonstration, even when it's right inside the office. There is serious overcrowding. Japan has one of the highest population densities in the world in those areas where her people are concentrated. Over half of Japan's 108 million live on less than 5% of her land. Not as surprising as it sounds, because only about 10% of her total area is not mountainous and uninhabitable. And there is a problem in rationalizing the national identity, where Shinto shrines can be found not too far from the largest McDonald's hamburger shop in the world. But it is a modern consumer economy, and that is both its major strength and major weakness.
We have very special problems in urban life and the poverty in spirit in the midst of plenty. Japan is now facing the turning point, not only domestically, also internationally. What we are losing is national consensus. What is Japan is going, what we are looking for, that's what we are losing. So this we have to find out somewhere.
Since the oil embargo of October 1973 and the subsequent quadrupling of petroleum prices, the search for a national direction and the other very real problems that were byproducts of the Japanese success story have been superseded by other matters of much more immediate concern. You are now watching a Japanese television commercial for a Japanese automobile, and you may very well be watching it on a Japanese television set. Many of the people who made the commercial, the automobile, and the television set are probably out of a job. For by October 1974, the Japanese unemployment rate of less than 1% had already grown to more than 3%. Inflation had risen to 25%, and their much respected Vice Minister of International Trade and Industry was predicting an imminent, full-scale depression. Japan's lesson, a very high standard of living, just as in the rest of the developed world, has brought her people to near zero population growth. Japan's future, somehow she will cope with her two major sets of problems, all of the environmental and social questions raised by industrialization, and her almost unique necessity to import virtually all of her raw materials and petroleum and at least half of her food. In this period of economic transition, she may have some hard times ahead. China today is nearly self-sufficient. She has almost all the raw materials to make anything she wants to make, and a literate, healthy population to make them. She also has enough oil of her own to meet her own needs. As her standard of living is rising, her population is leveling off. Many Indians literally mortgage away much of their expected lifetime earnings to pay for their wedding day, a sign of incurably human optimism. For even if her minimum needs program were to be totally effective today, it would take at least one healthy, well-fed generation with much reduced infant mortality for her people to see any sense at all in population planning. India's problems are not unique. They are the reasons why the people of this part of the world are today 2/3 of it and counting.